Hey dear ones, and welcome back. Today we'll talk about something that's making big headlines in California right now. Lawmakers just passed a bill that would ban law enforcement officers from wearing masks while on duty. Yeah, you heard that right. No more face coverings for cops, immigration agents, or other officers working in California, at least that's the idea. So what exactly is going on here? Well, the bill actually comes in two parts, Senate Bill 627 and Senate Bill 805. Together, they're aimed at increasing transparency and accountability in law enforcement. SB 627, written by Senators Scott Wiener and Jesse Arreguín, says that officers can't cover their faces while on duty unless they're in special roles like SWAT teams or working undercover. There's also an exception for medical reasons. And SB 805 from Senator Sasha Renee Perez requires plainclothes officers to actually display who they are, their agency, and either their badge number or their name. No more guessing games about who you're dealing with when someone shows up with a badge. Now, why did lawmakers push for this? It all stems from some immigration enforcement raids earlier this year. In several of those raids, federal agents were reportedly wearing face coverings, masks, gaiters, things like that, while arresting people. Critics argued that this kind of anonymity made it hard to know who was really enforcing the law, and it even opened the door for imposters to pose as law enforcement. Imagine how terrifying that could be if someone shows up at your door with a gun and their face covered, claiming to be an officer. Would you know the difference? But here's where it gets tricky. The Department of Homeland Security pushed back, saying masks are sometimes necessary to protect officers' safety. If their identities are exposed, they could be targeted by retaliation or even violence against them or their families. And that raises a really important question. How do we balance transparency for the public with safety for the officers? Do you think it's more important that officers are identifiable at all times, or is it okay for them to cover up in certain situations? Now, don't get me wrong. The bills aren't saying every single situation is mask-free. Undercover agents, specialized tactical units, and officers with medical needs are exempt. But here's where another layer of debate comes in. SB 627 doesn't apply to all state officers. For example, the California Highway Patrol isn't covered by this law. And perhaps more importantly, there are big questions about whether the state even has the power to regulate federal agents like IC or Homeland Security officers. The Supremacy Clause in the Constitution usually gives federal law priority over state law, so there could be a huge legal showdown if California tries to enforce this on federal officers. Do you think states should have the authority to set rules like this for federal agencies operating within their borders? Another angle here is community trust. Supporters of the bill say that when people can see an officer's face and read their name or badge, it builds confidence and legitimacy. It makes law enforcement look less intimidating and more accountable. Opponents, on the other hand, argue that this could make it harder for officers to do their jobs safely, especially in high-risk operations. So again, it's a tug-of-war between transparency and safety. Which side do you think carries more weight in the long run? Of course, the bill isn't law just yet. It still needs to be signed by Governor Gavin Newsom. If he does sign, we can expect immediate challenges, especially from federal agencies. There could be lawsuits, and it may take the courts to decide whether California actually has the authority to impose these restrictions. And even if the law does take effect, how will it actually be enforced? Will there be penalties for officers who wear masks anyway? Will agencies adapt their policies quickly, or will they resist? These are all open questions right now. And here's the bigger picture. This debate isn't just about masks. It's about power, identity, and trust between the public and law enforcement. It's about whether communities feel protected or intimidated. And it's about who gets to set the rules when federal and state governments clash. If California succeeds here, could other states follow? Or could it set up a battle that ends up in the Supreme Court? So, what do you think about all of this? Should law enforcement officers always show their faces and names? Or do you think there are legitimate reasons for keeping that information hidden in certain situations? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for hanging out with me today and diving into this big story. If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to give it a like, share it with a friend who might find it interesting, and of course, subscribe for more news explained in plain English. Until next time, stay curious, stay thoughtful, and I'll see you in the next video.